On to our final topic of the day. There are new framework laptops. Now, this is all announced thanks to a very clickbaity thumbnail and title from Linus Tech Tips. It's a great video. But just to get the title of the video was I made a bad decision. Framework investment update. The picture is him. He looks angry. There's money burning. It's like, oh no, what's going on with Framework? Like, they're not doing well. But it's clickbait. They're doing very well. They're coming out with new laptops, and they're coming out with AMD powered laptops. Now, for the first 2 generations, they were Intel powered. And one of the big things that people asked for was, hey, can we have AMD powered laptops? Since it came out, that's what people asked for. And they're finally bringing the Ryzen 7000 CPU to framework laptops with the 3rd generation. People have also been asking for a larger battery, and they're upgrading the battery from 55 watt hours to 61 watt hours, which is a decently big upgrade. But I guess the more important thing about the battery upgrade is it's the same size as before. So if you had a 1st generation framework laptop and your battery's been dying and you want to replace it, you can replace it with a newer 61 watt hour battery. The only difference between the two is there's chemistry improvements. So that's why they can fit more battery capacity into the same size as before. They're also bringing a bigger version of the laptop, which I'll get to later, a bigger 16-inch version. They're also bringing a removable GPU to that laptop, which is, another thing that people have been asking for a long time from Framework is it's great that you can upgrade the motherboard, but these motherboards have the CPU and GPU baked in together, right? Let's say if I want a more powerful GPU than what's offered in this Intel version, I don't have any option for that. So they've listened to what people have asked for, and they've delivered on that. They're also adding 13th gen Intel upgrades that are coming. There's a matte screen option that's coming too. And on the bigger 16-inch laptop version, like I said, it features a removable dedicated GPU expansion slot on the back. So now you can upgrade your CPU and you can upgrade your GPU independently of each other. Now, they haven't gone into full details about this actual laptop, about what kind of GPU it's going to feature, whether it's going to be an AMD or an NVIDIA GPU. If I had to guess, it'd be AMD. Or I guess, maybe it'll be both. Maybe we'll have options for both. But considering that they are now offering AMD CPUs, I'm going to assume they're going to offer AMD GPUs too, but no specifics on that yet. But as is typical Framework fashion, it's going to be open source in terms of the design. So it's initially designed for GPUs, but you could use it for other things. You could use it for extra SSD slots. You could use it for a capture card. Let's say if you're a company that makes some sort of proprietary tech that no one else is going to design for you, you could use the open source designs to make that part for yourself that will fit directly onto the back of your Framework laptop, your 16-inch Framework laptop. The bigger version also has modules on the sides of the trackpad. So if you think of a MacBook Pro, how they have, the speakers on the side, they have speakers on the sides of the keyboard that can actually be removed. And when I saw this in the video, I was like, holy crap, I didn't think those could come off, right? So there are speakers with LED lights flashing in them. You could remove those. You could, they put wood panels on the side if that's what you're into. And you can remove the entire keyboard itself the same way. So instead of taking the entire laptop apart to remove the keyboard or swap the keyboard, in the video Linus showed, you can take the keyboard, you can move it to the left, you can move it to the right, you can add a numpad the same way, you could add a secondary display. It's ridiculous the amount of stuff you can do. If you're interested, we'll post a link in the show notes. But the whole time I was watching the video, I was kind of losing my mind as to how customizable this device looked. There's also more I/O spots on it. So the typical 13-inch Framework has 4 slots on the sides. This one has 6 I/O module slots on the sides for, easily swapping in whatever input you want. They're also updating the marketplace. So third-party manufacturers can sell directly to consumers on the marketplace. Also, consumers can trade and swap IO modules directly with each other. So yeah, definitely huge thumbs up for this announcement. I was surprised by it. I was surprised by everything that they showed off in it, but I'm definitely interested to hear your thoughts on this. First of all, the fact that they're bringing a bigger framework laptop, a 16-inch, and that they're bringing an AMD removable GPU. I'm just interested in your thoughts on all of it.
I mean, this is insane. this is one of those things where it's like you would have assumed that none of this stuff that they're doing is possible just because no one in the laptop market has done it. We've seen things like the X13 Flow,
Oh yeah.
where you could like dock it to an external GPU and stuff like that, and like we've seen a lot of really cool and powerful machines, but we've never seen one where it's like you don't like the way this comes out of the factory. Well, you can change it, you can upgrade it, and I think this is really important, specifically when we're talking about the 16-inch version, which I have one really big issue with, which I'll get to in a second. But with the 16-inch version, I want to give it a lot of props for a couple of reasons. One, I like the design upgrade. What they did with the 16-inch version over the 15-inch version is they made the keyboard deck area like an all black kind of look. And then, so it's kind of two-tone. It's all black where the keyboard is, and then where the trackpad is, it's silver. And it kind of has a nice classy look to it. Like you mentioned, it does have the 6 slots for the added modules as opposed to 4, which is really cool. It gives you more expandability. The idea that you can add a numpad is amazing. A lot of larger laptops, like 16 and 17-inch laptops, do have numpads, but not everybody wants a numpad. Some people just like their keyboard to be fully center and in line with their trackpad, so when they're typing and moving on the trackpad, everything feels natural. But some people, if they're doing a lot of spreadsheets, they need a trackpad. And in the past, it's been you could have one or the other. You could never have both. You could never decide which one you wanted. It's like that model either has a track or has a numpad or it doesn't. They said, hey, if you want a numpad, not only can you get it later and just swap your components around to add it in, but you can just decide you don't want it and you can have RGB light show on the side, or you could have wood, or you could have whatever you want. It's just a really, really amazing thing. And then the added modules, the GPU modules, is just so. Years ago, I bought a laptop, a Lenovo laptop. It was an IdeaPad Y500 or 400 or something like that. And the idea was, you bought the laptop, it came with a GPU, and if you wanted, you could take out the disk drive, and you can slot in a second GPU to it to increase your graphics performance and have it run in SLI and stuff like that, or Crossfire. I think it was AMD at the time. I don't remember. But anyways, that was something that was unheard of, and they very quickly abandoned that. Like, they didn't support that at all. And ever since then, there really hasn't been any manufacturers that have really tried anything like this. There was Dell, where they made a really, really large laptop, like a comically large laptop that had desktop-based CPUs in it that you could actually swap out. They didn't recommend that you did that, but you could if you really wanted to. It was socketable. But yeah, no one was really taking this idea seriously. And the fact that Framework, a brand new entrant into the space, someone who doesn't have, or a company that doesn't have billions of dollars from investors and stuff like that ingrained into their ecosystem, where they can make risks or they can take risks and fail and still recover, like Dell or HP, or even Asus can, to a certain extent, much smaller extent, but to a certain extent. They kind of have to succeed. So the fact that they're actually going against the grain, I think, deserves commendation. They make the big players in the market, like Apple and like Dell and like HP, look stupid, honestly, considering the fact that they're a much smaller organization and they're doing much cooler things and much more consumer-friendly things. So yeah, I can't be more happy with what they're doing here. I think it's something that needs to be applauded. One downside, I will say this: the 16-inch version doesn't have a headphone jack, but they're making a module specifically for a headphone jack. I, to quote Randy Orton, that's stupid. It's just incredibly stupid. And when I was watching the video, I was just repeating stupid in my head over and over again, like Randy Orton did with Kofi Kingston. Not important. But anyways, it's just one of those things where it didn't make much sense to me. But that is the decision that they made. And it's a small little thing that I'm not happy with compared to the fact that everything else that they're doing here is really, really cool and really consumer friendly. A couple of other things I want to point out in the Linus Tech Tips video that isn't on their website yet, but I'm sure they're going to talk about it soon. They mentioned that they have partnered with, I believe, oh man, I can't remember the case manufacturer, but they partnered with a case manufacturer to make an enclosure for people who don't have 3D printers so that they can have an enclosure for their old hardware. Because Framework does like you to have the ability to upgrade the internals of your machines. Now that will be a little bit limited between the 16 and the 13-inch version. Those are going to be separate. I don't think you're going to be able to swap a 16-inch version of the motherboard into a 13-inch, but I think that is still really cool of the fact that you can take out the motherboard and buy a separate enclosure and use that as a desktop when you upgrade your laptop. It's just a great idea. It allows there to be less e-waste. And same thing with the battery. The fact that the battery is the same size, so it's swappable between the two versions, even though it's a higher capacity, that is a choice that they had to make from the beginning when they started developing that new battery. And it was a smart decision, a decision that most companies wouldn't make, but they did. And that allows someone who already owns a Framework laptop to get a better machine just by getting a better battery and not having to buy a whole new machine. Really cool. The other thing I want to mention is, so the added GPUs. They mentioned that in this video that they're using a particular connector that, like you said, is going to be open and other people are going to be able to create stuff for this. So they specifically said, hey, a GPU manufacturer can just say, I want to make a new GPU for this laptop. And there's going to be no restriction for that. They can even sell it on Framework's website. And then on top of that, they are also saying that also, if you want that GPU to be used outside of the laptop, we want you to be able to put it into an external GPU enclosure or add it to your desktop or add it to a completely different machine. So it's not just proprietary locked down to the Framework laptop. Like, all of this stuff is insanely cool. And I mean, we could talk about it all day. I could definitely talk about it all day. I just can't express how cool and amazing this is. Although I will imagine that it's going to be quite expensive, but I don't care. I think this is, if I compare this to something like a MacBook, which great machines, we'll never say anything about that they're not great machines. But when you talk about how much you're paying for those machines and what you're getting, what you get is what you get. You can't change it. You can't do anything with it. It's just that. If I'm paying the same amount or a little bit more for something that I can convert into a completely different machine, I can gift to someone for it to be their first machine, like, this is just so much more valuable, in my opinion, than what every other manufacturer in the laptop space is doing.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up a good point, right? Like, they are a newer company. They're a younger company. They don't have the billions of dollars that other companies have. And they're creating these things and they're taking risks, right? Remember when we first started talking about Framework, we said their vision is great. What they say they want to do is great, but we just hope it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We like, yeah, the fact that they're selling a laptop that you could upgrade yourself, that you can, customize yourself after the fact. It's a great idea, but let's see if they follow through on it. And then they came out with the second generation. It's like, all right, it's great. You made it to second generation and they made improvements. And if you wanted to swap out the screen, you could. If you want to swap out they made good improvements. And now they're on their third generation. And we're seeing not only are they continuing to, have upgrades for their base model, but now they have a second model, right? And they're adding all these new features like the removable GPU, which in the video, I believe they said they got the idea from Dell, who came out with it in like 2008, but then did nothing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't even open source the design. So Framework then kind of had to back engineer the design themselves. And then now they're making it open source for everyone. Like you said, if someone else, if Asus, if MSI, or if someone wants to just develop an enclosure for it, they can do that because they're going to make it open. So the fact that they're taking risks that bigger companies aren't, making things more consumer friendly, and that they're sticking by their word, right? As I said, when they first came out, when we first started talking about them, we were saying, uh, we hope that this happens. We hope that they follow through with this, and we hope that they stick around. And for them to now be on their third generation, I think, I've always been a fan of Framework. I'm very happy to see it. And yeah, just like kudos to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. With regards to Framework, like I was definitely very skeptical of the original claim that they made years ago, and I even said it on this podcast. And I admitted that I was very wrong when they added in the upgradable boards. I never thought that would happen, and they just brought it up to 11 with this one, with this new announcement. I hope these launch relatively soon and aren't too expensive. Although, like I said, I don't really care if they are expensive because they're doing such cool things. But yeah, I just got to give them props for completely making me 180 on how I felt about the company, from thinking that they were just making empty promises, because that's something we're so used to in this space, to executing and then going above and beyond is just amazing.
Yeah. Like so many companies will promise the modular this, or you can upgrade this on your own. And they'll design, like, who was it, LG, that had the whole swappable phone where you could put a camera on the back, or you could swap out your battery, and that maybe lasted a year, right? And now we're on like the third, fourth year of Framework. So yeah, congratulations, Framework. Take it easy, everyone in podcast land.
Catch you in the next episode.